This weekend, we're going to talk about how to deal with difficult people. What happens when somebody toxic is in your life? The Bible is so clear on a multitude of places. In fact, I'm going to give you a lot of scriptures this weekend, so make sure you take notes. Here's what Romans 12:18 says, and I love this. It says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And I love that. Live at peace with everyone. But that's not all it says. The writer gives us a caveat. He gives us an out. He says, if it is possible. What is that saying? It could be read, it's impossible to live at peace with everybody. There are going to be some impossible people. Some of us are going to have difficult people in our lives. A few years ago, my wife and I were on the way to Jerusalem. We spent 10 days in Jerusalem. And while we were flying there, we were flying to Tel Aviv. And sometimes when you go around the world, you literally have to go around the world to get there. And we were hopping through a bunch of different cities. And we ended up in Paris. After a 9-hour flight, we landed in Paris. And we were tired. And I looked over at my wife. And I was like, hey, girl, I took you to Paris. She was like, this don't count. It's just a layover. So we were just there for 6 hours. And when we landed, the pilot came on. He said, hey, we're going to be taxiing for about 20 minutes. And he said, there's a little weather here if you look out your windows. And we noticed that it was snowing. Now, you have to understand, they weren't expecting snow. It was like a freak snowstorm, and it shut the airport down. And so 20 minutes to taxi to the terminal turned into 2 hours that we had been sitting on the tarmac, and it was brutal. We were already tired from an international flight. Now everybody's tired. And there was a guy sitting across the aisle from me who apparently was the most important man in the world. And so he was on the phone. He was on the phone with Delta, and he was like, I don't care if nobody else gets off this plane. You got to get me off this plane. I was like, okie dokie, sir. And so then we finally got to the gate, and right before we stood up, the pilot said, hey, sorry, there's a problem with the gate. We have to go to another one. So it was infuriating. And so finally, 3 hours, we're sitting there. And finally, the fasten seatbelt light comes off, and we're able to stand up and go. And when we stood up, this guy, Mr. Important, the most important man in the world, was so aggressive with his stand. When he stood, have you ever seen somebody aggressively stand up? He aggressively stood. I'm an idiot. He aggressively stood, and I just normally stood. I exhaustedly stood. I stood up, and when he stood up, he hit me with his shoulder, bam, and I was like, hey, bruh, what are you doing? Why do we have to be that way, Mr. Important? But he didn't see me. He didn't even notice me. And then he turns around. He's got his backpack on. He turns around, and when he turns around, he hits me in the chest. And at this point, I'm like, hey, now I've reached my quota. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. I only got 2. You fist to get it. You touch me again, it's going to be on. And then he's pulling down his suitcase. And when he pulls down his suitcase, have you ever been on a plane with these kind of people? It's like there's nobody else in the world. He pulls down his suitcase, and he's so mad, he yanks it out and hits me in the head. Now, at that point, I'm embarrassed to tell you. At that point, there's a couple of different people that live in here, okay? The one that y'all know is Pastor Jeremy, but that dude met Texas Jeremy. The pastor was out the window, okay? It was gone. And I had an immediate response. I don't know if you ever had that moment where you don't know, I didn't know that was in there. I was tired. I was tired. And before I even realized it, I both hands, like the 10th grade cafeteria shove. I shoved it. I was like, what are you doing, bruh? Okay, if I call you bro, we're good. I call you bruh, it's fixed to be on. Now, what's funny, what's ridiculous is he had no idea that he had done this to me. He didn't even know that he had hit me, okay? So he just thought I was assaulting him. What's even funnier is my wife had no idea that he had done this to me. So she goes, what are you doing? And I was like a 5-year-old. I was like, it was him. And he said, I'm so sorry. I was like, you better be sorry, bro. I'm a pastor. Where do you pastor? First Baptist. I'm thinking, I'm playing. I'm kidding. I love First Baptist. Greg Mott here in Houston. Amazing people. But it was funny. I was actually embarrassed of myself because when I came in touch with a toxic person, guess what came out of me? Toxicity. Do you know why? Because I was operating out of the overflow. Out of the overflow of what? Exhaustion. So what did he get? He got frustration. And some of us are constantly operating out of the overflow of exhaustion and tired and worn out dreams and messed up marriages. And so what happens to the people in your life? They're just getting frustration constantly, and that's what's happening with you. But what does the scripture say? It says, hey, listen, live at peace with everybody. Well, how do I do that? Look at the first part of the verse in the New Living Translation. It says, do all that you can. Everybody say you. You. Everybody say me. Type it in the chat. Me. Type me. Some of y'all need to hear me with a bunch of E's. Me. It's your responsibility. Yeah. My dad used to say this, and it frustrated me. And I love you, Pop. You're such a blessing to me. But he used to say this. If it is to be, it's up to me. And I'll say, no, it's up to somebody else. But the truth is, if it is to be, it's up to me. What is this scripture saying? Listen, you're going to come in contact with some impossible people. You're going to come in contact with some toxic people. You're going to come in contact with some frustrating people. What are you going to do about it?